We're good. Okay, you're here. The February 10th meeting of the Greenwich Land Use Board is called to order. Amy.
This is the regular meeting of the Land Use Board of the Township of Greenwich. Adequate notice of this meeting has been given in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, in that a notice was published in the Express Times and Star Ledger newspapers. Notice was posted on the municipal building bulletin board in the Township Administration Building in Greenwich Township, New Jersey, and notice was filed with the Township Clerk. Chair, Mr. Bruce Williams.
Okay, here.
Mr. Mark Scuderi.
Here.
Paul Beam.
Here.
Mr. Joseph Giacello.
Here.
Mr. Brian Baylor.
Here.
Ms. Kathy Cullen. She requested to be excused from tonight's meeting. Mr. Gary Hill.
Here.
Mr. Joseph Fiamma.
Not here yet.
Mr. Jeremy Blunt.
Here.
Miss Andrea Sherlock.
You're muted, Andrea.
Thank you. Here.
Mr. Rocky Stein. Board Attorney, Mr. John Drill.
Here, was Rocky Stein here or not?
Not here.
Okay.
Board Engineer, Mr. Mike Finelli.
Not here yet. He says he's on his way.
And on behalf of Board Planner, Ms. Kendra Lely, we have Ms. Mara Rexler Woopker.
Here.
Mara, how do you pronounce your last name?
It's Webker. The
Web-
U silent.
Webker. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I need a motion to, I think Joe Piami is
He told me he was coming tonight,
still coming. So
but if you
we're,
want, we'll just do the motion to excuse him in case he doesn't show up.
all right. So I need a motion to excuse Joe Piami and Kathy Cullen. Was there anyone else?
And Rocky.
And Rocky Stein.
Make a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Joe. Roll call, I guess.
Yep.
Mr. Bruce-
Until we're all back in person all the time, roll call is the best way to go.
Yeah, yes.
Mr. Mark Scuderi.
Yes.
Mr. Paul Beam.
Yes.
Mr. Joseph Giacello.
Yes.
Mr. Brian Baylor.
Yes.
Mr. Gary Hill.
Yes.
Ernie Blunt.
Yes.
And Miss Andrea Sherlock.
Yes.
And
Okay.
maybe the chairman could get a hold of Rocky Stein, because we also have to get him sworn in. He hasn't even been sworn in yet. So Bruce, maybe you can talk to him he can get sworn in by the township clerk. He doesn't have to wait to the meeting for me to do it.
Okay, will do. All right, let's rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Order of business would be approval of minutes from January 13th, which is our reorganization meeting, and let the record show that Mr. Finelli is here.
Good evening, everyone. My apologies. I'll just go sit over there, I guess.
In the corner, Mike.
Where I belong.
Time it.
So you should all receive copies of the January 13th minutes. Are there any comments or corrections? If none, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the minutes as written.
I'll make a motion.
Second,
I'll second.
I have Joe.
okay, roll
Mr. Bruce
call.
Williams.
Yes,
Mr. Mark Scuderi.
Yes.
Paul Beam.
Yes.
Mr. Joseph Giacello.
Yes.
Mr. Brian Baylor.
Yes.
Mr. Jeremy Blunt.
Yes.
And Miss Andrea Sherlock.
Yes.
we got everybody?
Yep.
Okay.
Joe was at the
Okay.
meeting, but he's not here tonight.
All right. So next order of business is adoption of resolutions. We have a resolution delegating completeness and incompleteness, a completeness waiver determination. And you may have noticed we have two separate versions of that. And this basically, the difference between them is basically just how much we want to delegate. John, could you spell out the difference between the two?
Yes. The one resolution is the one that you did last year. And that delegates to Mike, well, to the board engineer and the board secretary, the right to determine completeness. And then if the applicant wants a waiver from one of the items, they have to come to the board. The second resolution is what I convinced the Raritan Township Board of Adjustment to adopt last year, and they also adopted it this year. It takes it to the next level. So as not to waste applicants' time and money and board time, that one would delegate to the board secretary and the board engineer, not only the determination of whether something's complete, but if the applicant applies for completeness waivers, they would be authorized to grant or deny them. Now, and the reason that I'm suggesting this is because what question does the board ask when someone requests a completeness waiver in any event? They ask, they say to me, what should we consider? And I say, well, you should ask your board professional, do they need this information to do their report? If the board professionals say, we need the information to do our report, then my recommendation to the board is deny the waiver. And if the board professionals say, we don't need that information to do the report, then my recommendation is grant the waiver. Well, if this is delegated to Mike and to Amy, when someone requests a waiver, Amy will also call up Kendra, even though she wouldn't be mentioned, it would be Mike and Amy. And if Mike and Amy deny a completeness waiver, the applicant can always come to the board to basically have them overruled, to ask the board directly for the waiver. But this way, the applicant doesn't have to come in for those waivers, and you have the, you have that meeting first, and they're put on the following month if they're complete. This would streamline things, save them time and money, and save you guys time. But obviously, you don't have to. I mean, you could do it like when I first came, nothing was delegated. They came and they told you their whole story, and then you guys would determine which items were complete, which weren't, the waivers, and it would take all night. So we got better than that. Now I'm looking to recommend that you be even more streamlined.
So I guess my first question is to Mike. How do you feel about going that extra step?
I am fine with going that extra step. As far as I'm going to assume you're asking me that question because that kind of obviously gives Amy and I'll say probably more so me, a little more authority to just take care of these items on my own as I see fit.
That's right. And right now, listen, Mike does a report right now where he makes a recommendation or not. Generally, you follow his recommendations. If you have confidence in Mike and he's making these recommendations and you generally follow him, I can't even remember, maybe once in 3 years that you didn't follow one of his recommendations, then why wouldn't you have confidence in him to actually make the determination rather than just make the recommendation?
I could add to that, John, and that's probably where I was going to go next in answering Bruce's question. I've been the board engineer for a while now. You've read all my reports. I make the recommendations. I don't know if I can remember a time when you didn't agree with my recommendations.
I remember one, Mike, but I'm not going to talk about it now.
Yeah, well, do you remember what it was?
I'm not
Okay.
gonna-
Okay, the vast majority of the time. We'll keep it at that. That's fine. And
Were they all unanimous?
No, it wasn't unanimous, but look, it doesn't matter. It only happened once since he's been doing it. That's a heck of a track record. You guys correct more of my resolutions in 1 year than that.
And hey, I think I know the pulse of this board, what is important to this town, what items really aren't necessary, and what items are necessary, depending on the application in question. Obviously, the bigger the application, the less waivers. That's typically, there's a direct relationship. So, hey, the way it's been for the last few years, with me acknowledging what's fulfilled and just only supplying a report which lists the waivers and my recommendation, fine. Want to continue like that? It's worked, it's fine. If you want to, let's say, take one more step forward, if you want to call it that, where you won't see an applicant until it's complete and they come before the board. And then we're ready to go. So,
Is there, would we still have, I mean, it wouldn't be part of us approving something, but is there still a completeness report essentially?
absolutely.
Because that has to go to the
Yeah,
applicant.
no, absolutely. No, you would get reports in the same timeline and so forth. Okay, we meet on a second Thursday. I'd like to try to get my reports out by the Friday before that, the weekend before that. You would still get those
And
reports.
by the way, Bruce, instead of getting his report saying, I recommend this waiver, I recommend against that, it will say, I grant this waiver, I deny that waiver.
Yeah, exactly. That would
And
be,
again, if the applicant, if he denies one and the applicant wants, thinks Mike's wrong, then you might see an applicant, because they can always come to you and say, look, he denied it, but I want you to grant it.
for A, B, and C, we don't think it's right. Yeah, right, absolutely could.
So other board members, questions, thoughts on this?
Gary Hill, do they have any change in any other towns or it's the same way?
I told you that Raritan Township is my other board that does it this way. That's where I got the idea from. I didn't develop it for you. We developed it in Raritan Township. It just so happens that Amy's also the board secretary there. So I've seen it work in action with Amy and the township engineer there.
I was gonna ask, how does it work? How have you found it? Like,
Oh,
helpful?
it's fantastic.
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 Okay.
Simplifies things a lot.
I mean, we certainly give up a certain amount of checks and balances by going that way. But the reality is, every time Mike comes in and says, I recommend we grant this waiver or don't grant this waiver.
Yep.
We follow Mike's recommendations.
Except one time. Apparently, that I forget.
So when the second of those comes up, how will that play out in this scenario?
The way that will, if he denies one, the applicant will come in. The statute says, even if they're granted, if the board wants to see it, they have to supply it after the fact. You just can't deem them incomplete once they've been deemed complete. But if a board member says, geez, you know what, I wish we would have had that environmental impact statement, and Mike had waived it because it was a small application, then you tell the applicant, listen, we know it was waived for completeness. We want to see an environmental impact statement. They're going to have to submit it to you.
Yeah, you still have your bite at the apple, if you want to call it that, for when they come for the hearing.
Right.
And that's a good example, the EIS on a small application, that's a very good example. Let's say it's on a property, there's wetlands and there might have been some contamination years ago, who knows? That'd be something you say, well, we want you to do this and specifically look at, A and B, whatever they may be, so. However you decide to go, I'm fine with, and I will work in that, in those parameters.
And Mark Scuderi wants to say something, I can tell.
No, not really, but I definitely agree with making it simpler, more cost effective for the residents. I'm all for it. I think it's a great idea.
Anyone else? Any thoughts? So you want to go to a straw poll to say who's in favor of doing the new version, which would grant the complete authority to Mike and Amy to whatever. So everyone who's in favor of the new version, raise their hand. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's unanimous from what I can see.
Can't see Gary's.
I can't see Gary's hand.
It might not be right. So
If I never raise.
Because I'm not raising it.
Okay. So we have, who's not in favor of the new version? That would be Gary, so 1. So it looks like we're in general, so.
You might want to hear
Clarify
from
my
Gary.
statement before.
You
The
might
reason
want
why I
to
was
hear from
asking-
Gary.
the reason why I was saying that was because you only mentioned Raritan Township. Was there any other township around us that were doing the same thing other than Raritan Township? That was my question.
No, no one, because this is relatively new. I think I'm one of the first ones to go this far last year. So we'll see if it spreads. You'd be on the cutting edge.
Cutting edge, Gary Hill, cutting
Okay.
edge.
Okay.
I'm trying to look at these because I have, are these in the version numbers denoted differently at all, or?
The same.
There's one extra clause is where.
Yeah, there's one extra
Find it, but I
sentence.
know
They're
it's
both
there.
The
noted.
file names digitally are different, but not,
Yeah, the title.
Yeah, you got it.
And that.
There it is.
You got this.
Bruce, look at the title. The title's different also.
One has complete.
But they're the same.
Completeness and incomplete version.
Oh, okay.
Is this
Yeah,
the
there
new
you go.
version?
It's the longer
This
title.
one here, those are the same.
These are two separate documents, right?
Okay. So, based on the straw poll, I guess I need a motion to develop a resolution delegating completeness, incompleteness, and completeness waiver determinations to the board engineer and board secretary.
I'll make the motion.
There a second?
Second.
Me and
Is
Mark.
and Mark, okay.
Mr.
Roll
Bruce
call.
Williams,
Yes,
Mr. Mark Scuderi,
Yes.
Paul Beam,
Yes.
Mr. Joseph Giacomo,
Yes.
Mr. Brian Baylor,
Yes.
Mr. Gary Hill,
No.
Ernie Blunt,
Yes.
Miss Andrea Sherlaw.
Yes.
okay.
Well, thank you, I guess, for your confidence, and I'm sure Amy and I will be proud of our work product, and if there's any questions ever, please don't hesitate.
From this to this.
And
Okay,
if the thing doesn't work out, you could, this is, you know, this is not binding for the whole, you're up for reorg next year and you can always change it mid-year if it doesn't work out.
Yeah, that's very.
I expect it to work out.
So do I.
okay, next order of business is the resolution adopting emergency remote meeting protocols, procedures, and requirements for public participation in remote meetings. Now, John, we're not under an emergency now, is that correct?
No, we still have a health emergency. If you remember the health emergency, the legislators wouldn't extend it and then the governor put a new one on. So we're still under a health emergency. So therefore, you could have total virtual meetings if you adopt that resolution. Now, I've already rendered my opinion to the board that even after the health emergency is terminated, which at some point it's going to be terminated, you won't have the right to have a totally virtual meeting, but what you're doing tonight, in my opinion, you'll be able to do, meaning your meeting tonight is in person. Just because some of us are participating electronically with video and audio doesn't mean it's not an in-person meeting. If members of the public want to show up at the building, they can. If they want to show up via electronic and video, they can. And in my opinion, you'll be able to continue to do that as long as you actually have a physical presence in that room. And in my opinion, you don't even need a quorum in that room to have a physical presence. But this gives you the right, if you want, during a health emergency or a state of emergency, if you adopt this resolution following the DCA regulations, you could have a 100% virtual meeting with no one at the municipal building.
And is this the same resolution we adopted last year?
Same one you did last year. This is just for planning purposes. In my opinion, you should have this resolution adopted.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
How did we do our virtual meetings last year before we had this adopted?
No, this was adopted last year. Oh, before the DCA regulations came into effect, there were a group of attorneys. I was one of them. There were 10 attorneys in the state. We took it on ourselves to try to keep meetings going. So development wouldn't stop. It wouldn't adversely affect the economy. And we came up with our own rules. And then the Builders Association sent them out. The League of Municipalities sent them out. All the constituents that we came from sent them out to their members. And we just made it up, quite frankly. Well, the DCA then, if you look at their rules, they're not 100% what we did. They're about 80% of what we did and 20% different. But so before these rules were operating, we were in a wild, wild west. We just did it because everyone on all sides agreed to do it. And then the legislature adopted a law saying anyone who did get an approval through a virtual meeting, they're precluded from filing an appeal based on the fact it was a virtual meeting. So that was an after the fact Band-Aid put on a potential problem.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Just to clarify one thing, John, will this resolution give applicants the right to be remote and present evidence remotely?
Again, this resolution gives the board the right to have a 100% virtual meeting. As long as you have a presence in the room, if you want the applicant to be in the room, the applicant's got to be in the room. This resolution only takes effect if you have a 100% virtual meeting, no in-person presence at the municipal building. And in that case, absolutely. If you have 100% of virtual meeting, everyone's virtual. What we're doing tonight, right, is not covered by that resolution. And what we're doing tonight, you have an in-person meeting going and you're allowing certain people to participate virtually. You can decide who you're going to allow.
Any more questions? If there are none, then I'll entertain a motion to adopt resolution adopting emergency remote meeting protocols, procedures, and requirements for public participation in remote meetings.
I'll make that motion.
Well, and a second is Mark Scuderi. I saw his hand.
Okay, Mr. Bruce Williams.
Yes,
Mr. Mark Scuderi.
He's on mute.
you're on mute, Mark.
Yes.
Mr. Paul Beam.
Yes.
Mr. Joseph Chicallo.
Yes.
Mr. Brian Baylor.
Yes.
Mr. Gary Hill.
Yes.
Jeremy Blunt.
Yes.
And Ms. Andrea Sherlock.
Yes.
Okay, with that, then I will hand this over to, sorry, what's the, Wex?
Don't worry about it. I know who you're doing.
Webker.
Webker,
Just ignore the U.
exactly.
I don't even have a U.
I know,
Mara, why don't you introduce yourself first?
sure. So my name's Mara Webker. I'm a planner at T&M Associates. I've been a planner for about 20 years. And I'm a licensed professional planner. I also have my certification from the American Institute of Certified Planners. And I have been sworn in as an expert witness before other boards, as well as before the Superior Court of New Jersey.
And you're filling in tonight for Kendra Lely, who had another
Due to
engagement.
conflict tonight, correct. She apologizes for not being able to be here.
So can you raise your right hand? And do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're going to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so why don't you just go through, you can summarize the re-exam because everyone has had it and presumably they've reviewed it. And
Okay.
you sent out an errata sheet, which I scanned and I had Amy email to everyone. So this is just, an errata sheet is typo corrections, clarifications. And so at the end of the evening, hopefully, the board will make a motion to adopt a resolution adopting the 2022 periodic re-exam, but anywhere in the resolution where it says it's dated January 28, you'll add a comma, revised February 10, 2022, comma. And other than that, the resolution would then stay the same. So Mara, why don't you do your thing?
Sure. So I'm going to go through do you want me to go through the summary first or go through the list of changes first?
I would think summary first, then list of changes, and then ask for questions.
I just noticed that when he's printed, they only printed every other page. So I'm gonna go reprint ones for the people in the room tonight. So while she's talking, I'm gonna do that.
Oh, that's fine.
And Mara, are you gonna wanna screen share and show anything or?
I don't need to, not with a re-exam. I don't have any, like, if I had some graphics to show you, I would, but I don't need to.
Right, because Bruce, this is not a hearing.
Oh, I
The
understand.
exam does not require a hearing. We didn't even have to swear in Mara, but we did just out of an abundance of caution. This is just a planning document that can be adopted, has to be adopted at a public meeting, but not at a hearing.
And for the record, we did ask all the board members to submit any comments or changes to Kendra by a couple of weeks ago, and Kendra didn't receive anything in terms of changes. So the only thing that's on that error sheet, I guess, is essentially minor typos and corrections.
That's correct. And Bruce, maybe for the record, you want to state how many meetings the board had work sessions on this on this report.
Gee, if I knew that, but
Just ask them to refer to the notes.
I'd say at least a half a dozen meetings,
I
over
would
the
agree with that.
So the last re-exam took place in 2012. So as you know, every 10 years, all the municipalities need to reevaluate their master plans or their re-exams to see whether there have been significant changes. So in this instance, you're getting on the cusp of when it would be due. Since it was March 14th of 2012, and we're now in February of 22, you're just about right in the spot. What a re-exam does is looks at, what were the major problems and goals and objectives that you were trying to achieve in the past, and has anything changed? So in Greenwich, really not that much has changed as far as your goals and objectives. You're still concerned about preserving your rural character, and also your prime agricultural soils, your natural resources. That's still the same. And that was the same thing from your 2006 land use element to your 2011 land use plan element, and also with your re-exam in 2012. So those goals and objectives still are true today. There's been very little bit of changes. The only unusual change that we found was the population had, according to the census anyway, the population had decreased a little bit, which we tried to kind of figure out what would cause that. Are people leaving town? Are people moving out of state? We didn't really have a clear answer. What I think happened personally, in my experience with smaller communities, is that you're having a smaller sample size when you do the census information. So that therefore, there's going to be larger margins of error when when that data gets extrapolated, right? So the smaller the community, the more chances of having higher margins of error. The larger the community, less chances of having higher margins of error. So I don't really know if you've really had a true decrease in population. I spoke with the clerk's office and asked them if they were aware of any type of, were there demolitions? Was there something we didn't know about? But that's still a question mark of whether there really truly has been a reduction in population. But the good news is there hasn't been a significant expansion as there has been in prior decades. The concerns for Greenwich has been the development pressure that you've been experiencing and the population explosions. And so at least for that has kind of simmered down, which is consistent with really all your land use goals and objectives. The only other thing that's really changed, it's not on the local level, but more on the state level. The state is really pushing for towns to plan for electric vehicles. So as far as incorporating potential locations in the actual master plan exam itself, and also evaluating your land use regulations to see if they incorporate the required information for, like, whether you need to make any changes to your zoning regulations to ensure that electric vehicle stations are being incorporated into future site plans and future parking lots. So really not much has changed. The master plan makes a number of recommendations. A lot of them are just, they're fairly minor. At this point, the board is recommending that you continue to discuss with the Highlands Council whether or not you want to move forward with your petition, not making a decision either way, but continue to have this dialogue of whether or not it's appropriate for you to continue with your petition for conformance with the Highlands Council plan. You're also recommending a wastewater management plan update in the future, as well as your circulation plan element to you're proposing to remove road F, as well as evaluate other roads in the community to see whether they should be removed. Also, the board engineer is currently working on a stormwater management plan, so that recommends, once it's ready for your review, for you to review it and adopt it as to bring it up to date. The last item, I have two more items here. The next one is to update your farmland preservation plan element to incorporate the map that was also produced by the board engineer. I believe it was a 2017 map. So that would be good to update your element so that way it's, it's including all the most recently acquired parcels, either acquired or preserved parcels for farmland. And then.
A second.
Yeah, I'm sorry to
That's
interrupt. And good evening.
Sure.
Nice to meet you. Are you gonna say the same thing, Jeremy?
It's done,
Yeah, relative to specifically to the farmland open space plan,
the map.
all the other things, circulation plan, wastewater management plan, stormwater, you're right on point. We just updated the farmland open space plan, literally, and I'm looking at Jeremy Blunt because he's the chairman of the open space committee. So that map, the 2017 date you referenced is incorrect. It's a 2021. It's probably dated 2021, right, Jeremy?
No, it's probably 2022 now.
Well, it might have been, okay, January 2022 or December 20.
Really recently did it. Okay, so that makes sense why we don't have it. The date that that's in here. So I think that when you make, Mr. Drill, if they decide to move forward with adoption tonight, they can make that change. Just noting the most recent.
Yeah, you can, we'll add it to the errata sheet.
Okay.
Let me see if I can get you a date, if I can track down the email when we send it out.
Well,
So
I know
could
Jeremy-
Kara-
I know
No, I sent
Jeremy
it to
sent it to
Kendra and
Kendra.
Bruce, so,
Yeah.
and she acknowledged that she received it, so.
Okay.
I'll look anyway. We'll get the date.
Okay.
Carry on, excuse me.
So are you stating this, what you've already updated the farmland preservation plan? It doesn't need to be updated again. It's in other words, did you also update the element itself or just the map?
Just the map.
Just the map. So
Just
I don't
the
think
map.
it does any harm. We could make the correction to the date of the map in the document, but it certainly doesn't hurt because I think the way the language in there is to review it for any other updates for that are consistent with the State Agricultural District Committee. It says, it is recommended that the farmland and open space preservation plan be amended to include the 2017 farmland open space map, which we're now going to change to 2022, and any additional updates as required by the SADC.
Yeah, and by the way, the farmland element has to reference that map. I mean, they're right. Meaning T&M is right about that.
But the question is, are we recommending that does anything else need to be amended in that plan or just the map?
I don't know, but I think the language you have is fine because it says if anything else needs to be amended, it should be amended.
Okay.
Well, the reason I interrupted, John, is because Mara specifically referenced a 2017 plan. And being that we just did this, as you heard, that caught my ear. And yeah, I'm looking at actually the email we sent out, the new map. Come on. Okay, is 11322. That's the current latest farmland and open space map.
Matt,
Mike, that map was done January 13th of 2022, you're saying?
I'm looking at the revision block right now, 11322, yes.
So who has seen that, or where was that sent?
Well, we sent it to Frank Pinto, who kind of like was steering the ship. Frank Pinto is the open space consultant for the township.
Yeah, but I mean, did the open space committee say that that's what they wanted done, or is this just you and Frank Pinto doing it?
Jeremy, go ahead.
Yeah, it's an updated map that shows, it reflects the accurate open space parcels, farmland preservation lots, as well as anything pending.
But Jeremy, I'm asking, is this from the open space committee?
From open space farmland, yes.
Jeremy is
And
the
that's the
chairman.
map.
That's the map.
That's the
And
map, Mara, that,
The map.
so we still obviously we want that element to be updated to include the most current map. So we'll just make sure that it's noted on the record and that we need to make that change. That shouldn't be 2017, it should be 2022.
Yep. And in fact, give that date again. I believe they said January 13th of 2022.
Yep,
11322.
glad that you mentioned that. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, and the last thing that the re-exam recommends is something that's being required from the state, which is a climate change related hazard vulnerability assessment that will be required the next time you do an update to your land use element. So at this point, you don't need to, well, I guess there's different philosophies of whether you need to do it now or not, but we're of the opinion that until you're actually going to be amending your land use element and do maybe a more comprehensive update to your master plan, you won't need to do it now until you actually take on that step, that next step.
Right, that's also my opinion, and I wrote that joint article with Stan
Oh, you
Slachetka,
did, okay,
from T&M, and that's the opinion we came up with.
okay. I know there's sometimes, different interpretations. It's because it wasn't exactly clear.
Right.
But okay. And then as far as the recommended updates to the development regulations, the zoning map needs to be updated to include the most recently adopted affordable housing, multifamily affordable housing zoning districts. There's also a recommendation that the B1 and B2 zoning districts be expanded, not the districts be expanded, I'm sorry, the uses be expanded to allow horses, houses of worship, institutional and government uses. The zoning ordinance in general needs a good housekeeping review. There's been a number of different amendments over the years, and it makes it a little bit challenging because there's some internal inconsistencies. So that was also recommended for a to occur in the future, to have a zoning ordinance update, a comprehensive update. What do I have here next? Okay, so we talked a little bit about it already. For the zoning ordinance, any type of land development regulations are going to have to be evaluated to see whether any amendments need to be made in order to incorporate the state's requirements for electric vehicle stations. So if you're developing I'm going to give you an example. If you're developing multifamily dwellings, a certain number of the parking spaces have to be made ready for electric vehicles. So that means having some pre-wiring done. So that will, when you do your comprehensive update to the zoning ordinance, you want to make sure that you're also including those items. If you can't wait until then, if you think the comprehensive update to the zoning ordinance isn't going to happen for a while, then you should really front load this one to make sure that you're being consistent with the state requirements. And then the master plan, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry, but I have a question on that point specifically, and I apologize again for interrupting you.
Sure. No, no, please.
Relative to these electric stations. If an application comes in advance of an ordinance update per the new state regs on these charging stations, can we make them follow the state, John? Is that, or Mara, I mean, can we require that even though it's not in our code?
You have
have
to. You have to. That's what the law
Okay,
says.
yeah.
If
All
you
right.
don't have it in the code, then you are bound by the code that was written by, I believe.
Well, that was in the municipal land use law that they had to include it.
Right, but there's also, the law said that I believe the DCA had to draft.
There's a like a model ordinance.
Right. And if the municipalities don't adopt their own, they're bound by the model on top of it. I think the statute also says that.
All right, so has it been incorporated into the land use law? So it's in
Yeah.
there as a.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, so
July
with
2021.
requirements as far as residential, how many per unit, commercial, how many square footage per square feet, all that's all in there.
Yes.
I haven't obviously seen an application of that. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'm sorry again.
You know what? No worries, because when I was looking through this today, I was reminded, because I know I recently have done a couple reviews where I said, oh, I really should have mentioned this, because
Right.
it's new to all of us.
Very good.
Okay. The last item I wanted to mention was that the re-exam acknowledges the different properties that township, do you go by committee or council? Township council has
Township
committee, I'm sorry. That township committee has recommended that the board investigate for areas in need of redevelopment. Typically master plans, re-examinations would actually identify those that you want to incorporate, like a redevelopment plan that you want to incorporate into the master plan, but it's still good to have, so these are on your radar screen to include that list. All right, I'm sorry if I bored everybody. Does anyone have any questions for me?
I just have one comment, I guess. At the top of the pages, it says Greenwich Township in Ocean County, New Jersey.
Oh,
It does.
Oh, yeah. Ooh, I didn't know. I didn't.
I
know
just
catch
that.
there, Amy. Good catch.
What changes? Because mine all say warrant.
On the table of contents, it says Warren, but then on page
This is the revised,
page one.
Yeah, page one on down to page
The one that was revised today?
yeah, 1 and 2 are correct, and then all the other ones say Ocean County.
That is so strange, because it's this, I don't know how that happened, because I'm looking at the same document. And it was, I don't know, it must have defaulted to the, oh, it does, Ocean County. Okay, very strange. I don't know why it defaulted that way. What we'll do is we'll fix it, and then we'll send you the corrected version.
Good catch, Amy.
Thanks.
Jamie, you have an eagle eye. You have to let us know if you see anything else. I
I'm
don't
not
think
sure
it happened, because the original was fine. All I did was make some clerical changes.
I'm also not sure if it makes a difference, but the board is referenced as the
Yeah.
planning board. I'm not sure if it should be the land board.
What, you want to do planning board?
No,
Land
first,
No, man.
it says planning board on page 18 and on page 1. I'm not sure if it should say land use board. instead.
Land use board. Planning board, I see that.
So to clarify that, I've been copying or following along on the right plan. Are we doing the one that was prepared on January 12th? Because page 1, it says land use board on my draft that was emailed.
No, it's January 28, and then last
Okay.
revised, it's going to be last revised February 10, but it's the January 8th final draft that everyone should be working off of.
Barry, it's the second page one. It's not the Roman numeral page one, but the number page one.
I see it. So everywhere it says planning board, it should say joint land use board.
Yes. It's not even joint land use board. It's
You just
land-
call it
it's the Greenwich Township Land Use Board.
land use board.
The Greenwich Township Land Use Board is a planning board that also has the powers of a board of adjustment.
Yep. Okay.
Hey, in fact, take a look. There's a I put a footnote in on the resolution. The Greenwich Township Land Use Board is a planning board, which also exercises powers of a zoning board of adjustment. The Greenwich Township Land Use Board was created by Greenwich Township governing body pursuant to 40:55D-25C1 by adoption of ordinance 2014-02 on February 20th, 2014. The name of the Greenwich Township Planning Board was changed at that time to the Greenwich Township Land Use Board.
Okay.
I guess I must have been thinking the same thing.
And then the new map date. Okay. So I'll look through it more thoroughly too, to see if there's anything odd that comes up. So I looked at the document today in preparation for tonight, and that's when I saw a number of other kind of housekeeping measures. Most of them were clerical. Mr. Drill asked that I read them into the record. Would you like me to do that?
Well, put it this way. Did everyone take a look at that email? If everyone says, yeah, they looked at that email, and she doesn't have to read 17 items into the record.
Errata?
Anyone want her to read the 17 items into the record, or can we just accept the email that I then scanned and sent to everyone this afternoon? Bruce?
I guess my question is, do we want to add the other things to the list?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do we, have you got them all, or do you want to spell them out, or?
I think Mara has them all, right?
So the two additional is changing any reference to planning board to the Greenwich Township Land Use Board.
Right,
And then-
in Warren County, not Ocean County.
Warren County, not Ocean
And-
County.
And the reference to the farmland preservation,
Yep, the new date, the
right?
January date. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, okay, anybody else comments, or?
Bruce, do you want her to read all 17, or are you all right with?
I'm asking here. No, I don't.
I don't think there's 17. It goes to 17.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11. I have got 12 plus the 3 that we just discussed.
Right.
So 15 total.
Yep.
I don't think you need to read them all.
And they really were just clerical changes, like I bolded some things, I underlined some things to kind of give more clarification within the document. Some of the things were holdovers from prior drafts, like I noticed that needed to be corrected. Nothing substantive was changed.
Okay, board members have any other questions? I mean, this is, so the next course here would be to adopt the resolution adopting the 2022 periodic reexamination report of the master plan and development regulations as corrected in the errata sheet. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Paul, and then
Or Joe.
Paul for the motion, Joe for the second.
Joe for the second. So,
Mr. Bruce Williams,
yes.
Mr. Mark Scuderi,
Yes.
Mr. Paul Beam,
Yes.
Mr. Joe Chicallo,
Yes.
Mr. Brian Baylor,
Yes.
Mr. Gary Hill,
Yes.
and Mr. Jeremy Blunt,
Yes.
and Miss Andrea Sherlaw, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you, Mara.
Thank you. Do you need me to stay on?
I don't think so.
Good night.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, Mara. All right, next order of business is escrow balances. Amy sent out a late email. I learned tonight that we lost our assistant CFO. Is that?
That is correct.
So she was the one preparing those nice spreadsheets. So we don't have the spreadsheets, and also
But we will for
apparently,
next time.
but apparently she also didn't reach out for Target Rooftop. So this negative balance is the same one we had last month. So the CFO has said that she'll reach out.
Yes, I think we're still waiting for Mike to let me know how much he wants to ask for.
Okay,
So when he comes back, I'll
where'd my girl?
vanish.
Is there a COA update?
The only thing I would say is just to ask, Mike, where are we with the township signing off on the TWA for Ingerman?
Here, he'll be back in a
Comes
second.
back in about 30 seconds.
All right, and as to the other COA project, we're,
Oh, wait, oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
we're-
I thought that was the perfect time to.
John had a question. for
Okay.
you.
Mike,
Go ahead,
where
John.
are we with the township signing off on Ingerman's TWA? The treatment
Where are
work
we?
approval.
We are here. And that is, Gene Weber from our office just reviewed the revised TWA, because we had sent out an initial review a little while back, a couple months ago, I think. And that letter should go to the township committee tomorrow for, assuming it's on next week's township committee agenda, which is today's the 10th, so it'd be 17th, a week from tonight. I imagine it'll get approved. We're not taking any exception. We're recommending that the mayor and the clerk sign off on the TWA. So,
Mike, can you send me an email tomorrow saying that so I can send it off to Ingerman? Because I've been getting emails like every other day on it.
well, I would certainly, I'll copy, there's a cover letter with the TWA from our office. So I'll copy you, I'll make sure because you might not have been, in any event, I'll copy you, I'll copy.
Kate
Coffee.
Coffee. Yeah.
They'll know what's going on.
Okay, super. And then the update on the other project is still, we're still in the process of these eminent domain takings of the drainage easement and the sewer line easement. So until those things are done, they will not be back with their application. I mean, remember they started their application and we had to stop it because they didn't have those two essential elements of a development. So that's where we're nowhere beyond where we were the last time you guys asked me the question about that.
Hey, John, if you don't mind me asking, because I am curious personally anyway.
I'll put it this way. If you're curious personally, call me tomorrow. This is a public meeting.
Okay, well, personally and professionally, okay, I'll call you tomorrow. Fair enough.
And while you're out, Amy had a question for
Oh,
you
man.
regarding, yeah,
Okay.
you picked bad time.
I'm sorry, I waited till the master plan was done, I'm very sorry.
We're still in arrears for Target Rooftop. If you just want to let me know how much you want us to ask for. I know last meeting you said you were gonna go home and look through some things and we have a new finance person, so she hasn't reached out yet.
All right,
So if you can just get me a number.
oh,
I'll give it to
yeah,
her.
Ron, okay, gotcha.
And then you also, was this on the compliance too, or because you said you got a call asking about the compliance?
This is for Target parking
Parking.
stalls. They emailed me asking for the rundown of what we require for compliance.
The Target drive up as
Yeah.
listed.
Drive up stalls,
Didn't we sign off on that?
not for resolution compliance.
What am I thinking of? Is the one
We're just thinking of Target Rooftop.
that's right,
Mhm.
okay.
Well, I thought we.
We approved the drive up.
We approved the
We
drive up.
approved
too.
it.
We
They
approved
do
it.
compliance, yeah.
It's the
It's
compliance.
resolution compliant, it's the
I'm sorry.
post-approval,
Gotcha, okay.
where they have to get third-party agency approvals in some
Gotcha.
cases,
Mature
revise the
statement.
plans for
Okay.
my last letter, that stuff. I mean,
Making
It's all
sure
part
the
of the
plans agree.
yeah, it's all part of the conditions of approval that are in Mr. Drill's resolutions.
But you always handle that.
Yeah,
directly with
exactly.
them.
I mean, usually they're bugging me
Yeah,
directly, because, so I haven't heard from them actually. Okay.
because they're bugging me.
Okay. I guess they, sorry.
Okay, I think that brings us to the end of business. The only thing I'd say is, hopefully COVID is winding down here. We'll take a look at next month where we push it to a, complete in person.
Oh.
Not to say that we can't necessarily accommodate somebody via hybrid, but I'd like to get us all here if we can, but let's see where the COVID goes and how we're doing.
Sure.
For the record, I just want to say Joe Fiamma just joined us.
Hi, Joe.
Oh,
Hi,
Reset
Joe.
that
You're
clock,
muted.
buddy.
but hold on.
No, you're muted. If you're saying hello, no one can hear you.
You're
Still
muted,
muted.
Joe.
There you go.
There you go.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, folks, I had a family emergency, which I just got squared away.
Well, just
Uh,
record show that Joe is here.
He can make the motion to
Yeah,
adjourn.
Joe, you're here just in time to make a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion, Joe.
I just said that,
Make it,
Joe.
Joe. Make it, Joe.
If you make the motion, you were actually here. If you don't make the motion, no one will know.
Have a motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstain. All right, motion carries.
Bye, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Guys.
Good night, folks.
Good night.
Good night.